Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to another video deck profile that we're doing today. Today, as you might probably have guessed since the thumbnail and everything is already gonna reveal it, we're gonna show you catch of the day deck profile. And it was really popular yesterday when I was playing it on stream. Little disclaimer, a lot of the cards are proxied since I'm not at home right now. I didn't I forgot some of the cards at home, so we're gonna do it with what I have here. Only a few cards are proxied, but you'll have to deal with it. Alright? Okay, let's get into the video. So, the skill we're playing, of course, is Catch of the Day. It's one of the cards I had to proxy because I didn't have it with me. So, Catch of the Day says, if you control the legendary Fisherman, you can activate Yomi from your deck or your graveyard, and that skill can only be used once per duel. And once per turn, when the legendary Fisherman you control destroys a monster by battle or inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can special summon one level 4 low water monster from your deck or graveyard in defense position. So that's obviously quite a good effect. And to play that, of course, we play the legendary Fishermans. So this is pretty much what, or most of what the deck is playing around, is built around. The legendary Fisherman has the effect that it's unaffected by spell effects or spell cards while Yomi is face up on the field, and your opponent cannot target it for an attack while Yomi is on the field, but they can attack directly if it doesn't stop them from attacking directly. So you need another monster to stop them from attacking directly. But your skill is giving that as soon as you destroy one of their monsters, of course. The other good thing about spell effects is, of course, that that's really relevant this format. It makes it so that Mask of Restrict doesn't do anything against it. It makes it so Blast Sphere doesn't actually destroy it. Parasite Paranoid can be equipped, just like Blast Sphere and the other card, and Mask of Restrict, but it doesn't affect it, so it's not transformed into an insect. It can still attack insect monsters, and because it's not transformed into an insect, your opponent cannot send it to the graveyard for Cocoon of Ultra Evolution. So that's of course really relevant. And we're playing one which is proxied as well, the Legendary Fisherman 2. The Legendary Fisherman 2 has a little bit more attack and is treated as a Legendary Fisherman while on the field or in the graveyard. And while Yomi is on the field, it is unaffected by other monsters' card effects. And when this card leaves the field, you can add one level 7 water monster from your deck to your hand. Well, the second effect isn't that relevant, but against some decks or some cards, it has some relevancy that it's unaffected by monster effects. For example, against some style decks, making sure that you're unaffected by things like Gale Lizard, Yomi Ship, Man-Eater Bug, those kind of cards. Oracle, Gravekeeper Oracle, really important. Yeah, that of course has some relevancy. Gravekeeper Oracle has more problems getting over this card, especially when you can buff it up a little without it being able to decrease it with 2000 attack points. So yeah, that makes it this card is still played at 1, but because your opponent can still attack it, Moth being way bigger than this card, and the fact that it's not unaffected by spell effects makes this card a lot worse to play. Worse to play. But we're playing 1 just because it's still Legendary Fisherman and it has some uses this meta. Then, as a target for your Catch of the Day, we're playing 3 Yomi Ship. Yomi Ship, when it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, the monster destroyed by battle is destroyed as well. Well, that's really simple. So you have, most of the time your field will look like this. You have the Legendary Fisherman, Yomi that you got from it. You attack over your opponent's monsters and you keep giving yourself Yomi Ships. Your opponent cannot attack Legendary Fisherman, so they will have to keep attacking the Yomi Ships to be able to attack you directly, while you have Legendary Fisherman to keep attacking them and their monsters. And every time you do, you get your Yomi Ships back from the deck or the graveyard. So yeah, that's usually what a duel with this deck looks like. And Yomi Ship, being weaker and being buffed by Yomi, it having 1600 defense makes it so that some cards just don't get over it anymore. Cards like Gravekeeper Spear Soldier, Amazon Swordswoman, what are other relevant targets? Yeah, and anyway, 1600 attack makes it so that Command Knight can't get over it on its own. So yeah, that's a little niche that is relevant with this deck, but then to make sure we are able to actually summon Legendary Fisherman, even though we don't play that many monsters, we're playing 3 Calls Down. Calls Down says discard 1 card, reduce the level of all monsters in your hand by 2, even after they are summoned that turn. So yeah, this just makes it level 3 and summonable without a tribute. It's that simple. Then immediately we're going to the best target to discard with it is Yomi. Since then you can Calls Down, discard Yomi from your hand, summon Fisherman, and get the Yomi back from the graveyard with the Catch of the Day skill. That's one of the least, well, less minuses that you can actually do with this deck. That way you're -1 instead of a -2, which is of course a lot better. So yeah, this is a big minus, but it's worth it since Legendary Fisherman with the Catch of the Day skill is getting all those pluses throughout the duel anyway. Now, you could debate like, oh, only 1 Yuumi is not a lot or is not enough, especially since you need Yuumi during the duel. You could say like, you should play more, but playing more than 1 Yuumi is terrible for your deck. It's essentially a brick. You can't do anything with this. A second Yuumi is worthless as well. Your opponent usually doesn't even focus on destroying your Yuumi, as far as I've seen online, so I have no need to actually play 2. It just feels like a brick. I rather play a Jar of Avarice instead, since we're playing 21 cards, really important. And with Jar of Avarice you can shuffle Yuumi back into the deck as well, and that gives you a second Yuumi. And if you hard draw Yuumi, you essentially have 3 Yuumis. So 1 Yuumi since you activate it from your hand, 1 Yuumi since you can return with Catch of the Day from the graveyard, and 1 Yuumi after you Jar of Avarice it. So I much rather play a Jar of Avarice than a second copy of Yuumi, since Jar of Avarice also works against stall decks, and well, you can stall pretty well with this deck yourself if you want to. Then we're playing a card that's just made for this deck, the most important trap. It's Metalmorph. You actually really have to play this card 3 times in this deck. Metalmorph gives you monster 300 attack, and when it attacks an opponent monster, only when it attacks, it gains half of the attack of the monster it battles with. Well, usually that's not... Well, usually I think Metalmorph is actually a really bad card, since as a defensive card, this thing does nothing. There's pretty much nothing. The 300 attack and defense are never enough to actually, or pretty much never enough to actually survive. And yeah, in a lot of decks, if you're equipping it with something, that's a big no-no as well. But in this deck, the Legendary Fisherman is, yeah, the only time it actually battles is when it's attacking itself, when it's attacking himself. So it's never being attacked, so that makes Metalmorph really strong, since every time it battles, it just has half your opponent's monster. This is how you get over Muffs. This is how you get over everything. Now, you probably notice one of the proxies. Well, this should be a Metalmorph. This should be a third Metalmorph. But if you're in a budget situation or something, I guess Riryoku is one of the ways to fill up your deck. It's not as good, it's definitely worse, but it has the same purpose, just doing its job worse than Metalmorph. Then we're playing 3 Windstorms to set your opponent's weak monsters in attack position, so you don't actually have to stall your opponent to death. And to make sure that the early game you survive, and so that your opponent... so you can actually outstall your opponent a little bit while they're doing something dangerous, like setting your monsters into attack position or something. And then we're playing 3 Dust Tornado. It seems really standard, the last few cards. We're playing the Dust Tornadoes to snipe our opponent's Dust Tornadoes before they can destroy our Yuumi or destroy our cards, and to make sure things like Spellbinding Circles and stuff are gone, since Spellbinding Circle is pretty much the only card that actually stops your deck a little bit. So Instead, other cards you could play in the main deck are, let's take them. You could play Shard of Greed in the main deck since, you stall a lot, so you are usually able to trigger off Shard of Greed. But this format, even though it's a plus, I don't want the pluses. I'm too scared of stall decks. You can play Security Orbs. Oops. You can play Security Orbs in your deck, especially since they might try and remove your cards, but I'd rather play the other cards I'm playing right now. And same, you could play Sphere Creebos, but I'd rather play Traps than Sphere Creebo in this deck, since Traps are usually better than Sphere Creebo, but Sphere Creebo can't be Dust Tornadoed. However, in this deck, you want them to use their Dust Tornadoes on your back row instead of on your Yuumi, so you rather play the other Traps. And then for this, Flexra deck, just make sure you're playing 6 fusions so they think you're playing Waking, or at least that they don't know whether you're playing Waking or not. Just always important. And then for the side deck, the first card we're playing is Livia Dragon Daedalus. You can search it with the legendary Fisherman too, so that's a funny interaction. And you're just playing this for stall. This is just your out against stall and I don't know, other kind of decks that just try to, maybe a machine deck, something. I'm only playing it for stall. You can send Yuumi away from your field to destroy all other cards on the field. So you don't main this since it's generally too slow and you can't properly summon this card. Since, it's even with cost down, it still requires a tribute, and that's just not worth it. And destroying all your own cards and sending Yuumi to the graveyard is actually, the opposite of what you're supposed to do. But against stall decks, you can tribute your monsters that are floodgated with this, or spellbinding or whatever, so you can actually keep on pushing, as you already usually can do with Fisherman's, but okay. And against stall decks, you shouldn't prematurely bring Yuumi from the deck to your field, or throw Yuumi away with cost down. You should actually try and keep it, or hard draw it yourself, then activate it the first time so you can send it away with Daedalus to clear the field and just attack your opponent and get some free damage. And afterwards bring it back with Catch of the Day so you can clear the field a second time and just make sure you get rid of your opponent quickly. So yeah, that. Then Mario Kutai. This is for the Relinquish, Serpent Night Dragon, those kinds of decks. When you control this card during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can tribute this card to negate activation of a spell card and destroy it. So you get this card for free thanks to the Catch of the Day skill. So yeah, obviously we're at least siding 1 for those kinds of decks, since it's better than summoning a second Yomi Ship against those decks. And it's just you stop them in their place directly. Relinquish and stuff can be a little bit troublesome. Legendary Fisherman 2 also helps against that deck, but against Serpent Night Dragon, for example, this is just the best out you have. And yeah, you just play a one-off and your deck gets a lot better. It has a way better matchup, so obviously we're playing that. Then we're playing 2 Blast Hellbite Tribute. You can change one of those Blast Hellbite Tributes for another Legendary Fisherman 2, but we're playing this for against a Gravekeeper matchup. Since Gravekeeper is a bad matchup, they can destroy. They can set your monsters face down and destroy them, or make your Legendary Fisherman 0 attack, so we can get over Gravekeepers, and that just generally gets a lot worse for us. Oracle is a problem, no matter how they use it, so this is an out against that. And then we're finishing with 2 Sealing Ceremony of Suton. So Sealing Ceremony of Suton says once per turn you can, once per you can send 1 water monster from your hand to the graveyard to target 1 card or card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it. So if your opponent is playing a stall deck, you can usually choose one of the targets from Jar of Avarice and banish it. If your Jar of Avarice says shuffle all of them back into the deck and then draw a card. So if one of the cards is actually banished or one of the targets is banished, Jar of Avarice doesn't resolve anymore. So that way you can win even the stall game against those decks. And against Viral Despair as well, you can banish the zombies when they're targeting them to reborn them with Book of Life or with a Haunted Shrine. And then yeah, you're stopping their special summon when they're trying to stop you. And against Gravekeeper, you can stop their Rites of Spirits, which is also good. So against a lot of decks, it just helps. Against Sword of Deep-Seated, it does help unless they're doing it with Viral Infection, in which case you're still pretty screwed. Other cards you could potentially cite are Interdimensional Matter Transporter, just to dodge your opponent's cards with it. I don't think this is one of the better cards, but it's an option. Eradicating Aerosol. In most decks, I don't recommend playing this card since I think it's way too slow. If you have to take your opponent's moths head on first and can only counter them afterwards, I guess it's too late already. You've already took way too much damage, you've already lost way too much cards. But in this deck, it doesn't really matter. They usually can't send your monsters away, and usually they just use their mods to, well, stall you. As long as you don't have your metal morphs, you're not really getting over them. These are extra out so they can't stall you with their mobs. And then ready for interception. Once against warrior spellcaster decks, relinquished, maybe Blue Eyes if that's still a thing wherever your locals is. And Legendary Fisherman 1 and 2 are both warriors themselves, so you can protect them with this against some card effects. So maybe your opponent is playing Blast Hell by the Tribute for your Legendary Fisherman that you actually did Tribute Summon. You can dodge it with this. So yeah, that's basically it. That's it. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments. Make sure to leave a comment anyway, it helps the video a lot. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. And I hope you guys like this video. More content coming soon. And stream started again, so be sure to get there as well. Well, thanks. See you next time.
Трипаловский, трипаловский, Канбас тусовки, Адидас кроссовки.